People seem to people seem not to see that their opinion of the world is also a confession of character. Ralph Waldo Emerson. All right, good morning and welcome to another morning episode of the Liberty Dad Podcast, a discussion on politics and culture. I'm your host, DL, America's most objective libertarian. If you're tuning in live, thank you so much for giving me your time so early. All right, folks, we're back at it, stumbling a little bit this morning, just trying to get things worked out, adjust to some of the new format and whatnot. Anyway, what are we talking about today? Well, today's going to be fun. Now, look, first of all, foremost, let me get some announcements out of the way here. Reminder, next week, I will not be streaming live. Okay? And the reason for that is because I'm taking some time off work, and I'm going to take some time off the podcast, and then I'm going to use that to work on the podcast. So that's what we've got going on. So look forward to some improvements when I come back after that week. But I'm still setting up a couple of windows here. So what I will do, though, I will be dropping some episodes, some premium stuff that I produced a while back. I'll be dropping that next week. So there will be stuff that you most likely haven't seen. So that's cool. So we're not going to have a complete interruption. It's just going to be an interruption of me actually doing the live stream. That's it. So make sure you tune in. Just, you don't have to worry about jumping into the chat. Like if you say something in the chat, that's cool. That'll just basically be as if you were chatting later after the show, right? If you were commenting later after the show. So there won't be a live chat. So you don't have to rush to it or anything like that. So we're good. And so now, what are we talking about today? Well, I'm not going to talk about the shooting yesterday at the school. And here's why. The first, I don't know, somewhere between 24 to 72 hours, information changes rapidly. Right? And I don't like speculating or retracting. I'm not a journalist, so there's no rush for me to get this first comment like, oh, look at me, I broke this. I don't need any of that. I don't care. What I want to do is I want to have the evidence, the facts at my, fingertips that I can review and then, maybe do some research and then bring to you a good perspective. That's what I like doing. But I am going to touch upon some criticisms of libertarians over this. Yeah, you got that right. Some people have criticized libertarians. And I was like, I only got two. I didn't go digging for a whole bunch. But I was like, oh, yay, look, we finally get some attention. When you need a whipping boy, that's when people start talking about libertarians. They're like, oh, those libertarians. So let's take a look, because I think some of these are funny in a sense, a sad sense, but a sense. So here's Chris Rufo, and he says, we should put to rest the libertarian delusion that transgenderism is a matter of, quote, personal choice or, quote, live and let live. It's an ideology that has done grave damage to millions of Americans and has unleashed a nihilistic wave of violence on our society. Enough. Okay, Chris. Well, so what he's talking about, just in case you're not familiar, information has come out that the shooter yesterday was trans. I believe they were born Robert, and now they did identify as Robin. I believe the shooter killed themselves. Okay, so that's what he's referring to. So he's kind of pointing the finger at us libertarians. And he's like, well, this is personal choice business. And so here's my response to that. I say, conservatives who blame libertarians you kind of tell on yourselves. Because fundamental to libertarianism is personal responsibility. And you'll notice that conservatives who blame libertarians for one thing or another, they conveniently have far less to say of their own ideas and policies, despite the fact that they have far more influence and power. Yeah, like when it's time to vote and there's a libertarian candidate, conservatives love to tell you how you're wasting your vote. Libertarians don't matter. I was once a libertarian when I was a kid. Then I grew up. Like they have all these things to say. Basically, what they'll tell you is that nobody listens to libertarians. Libertarianism has failed. They'll tell you how libertarianism doesn't work. They'll make arguments and say like, "Whoa, name a libertarian society ever," right? So the message on one hand, out of the one side of their mouth, is going to be that libertarianism just can't compete, and that libertarians are useless and they have no power and they can't influence anything. But then all of a sudden, when tragedy strikes, out of the other side of their mouth over here on this side, they're like, "Oh, yeah, that libertarian idea, yeah, it's a failed philosophy. It doesn't work. See, it doesn't work here." And I'm like, wait a minute. Even if we go by the facts on the ground that we have right now, there's nothing, in my opinion, that would suggest that libertarianism had anything at all to do with this. Because I will tell you this. Conservatives love telling you about how trans people have mental disorders, right? And there's a conversation to be had there. Okay, well, guess what wouldn't happen in a libertarian society? You would not have the government imposing any of these ideologies on people, because they would, number one, they wouldn't be big enough to do that. Number two, they wouldn't have the power to do that. So all of these ideas would be left to the open market. That means your schools, they wouldn't be promoting like transgenderism to your children. They wouldn't be having, you wouldn't have teachers going out there and, getting excited about, their kids are using, their right pronouns and all that. You wouldn't have all of that, because I think the free market wouldn't tolerate it. The reason that conservatives can even complain about, this being pushed on our kids is because, in part, government, right? Because if I'm a parent and I take my kid to school and they're learning something that I don't like them to learn, if it's a completely free market, what do you think I do? I withdraw my child and I go somewhere else, right? It's a lot harder the way it works right now. There's not a lot of school choice. I mean, there is school choice, but it's very difficult right now. And you have to, the government forces you to take to put your child in school, and to make it difficult in some ways, to have, to be able to homeschool and whatnot. Really not so much government. But the point I'm making here is that you would have an entirely different world for which things would play out differently. And so right now, if conservatives want to point the finger, they should probably point the finger at themselves. What have they been doing the last 20, 30 years? Okay? What policies have they supported that led up to where we are? How come they never blame themselves? They're the ones with power. I don't have any power. So, no, that's just nonsense, Chris. You're dumb. I got to stop saying that, because like my son was watching my show the other day. I was kind of reviewing it, because sometimes I'll go back and I'll review and just like, how did I say that? Whatever. And I said something like dummy, and he was like, oh. And I was like, yeah, that's an adult word, son. It's not a really kid's show, but it should be kid friendly. So I'm gonna try to dial it down for other parents that might have their kids listening. So I'll try to be good. I will. I'm not making any promises, but I will try to be good. This next image, this one's really funny, and this goes toward my criticism of conservatives. Okay, so let's take a look at this one. So this one comes from Mostly Peaceful Memes. That is the name of the account. And they say, libertarians will look you dead in the eye and tell you the founders wanted this person to own guns. Interesting. Now, here's the picture. Here's the full picture of this person. Okay, and we're going to talk about that in just a moment. Okay, so that's the person that we're talking about. Good, and we're gonna get to that. Let's go back to this. Libertarians will look you dead in the eyes and tell you the founders wanted this person to own guns. And then here's what I say, just following my same criticism. Conservatives will look you dead in the eyes and tell you that despite losing the definition of a woman, they can totally solve gun violence. The problem isn't people having guns. It's failure to properly address mental health issues. Focus on that. Now, I'm not suggesting that this particular person has a mental health issue. I'm just saying, like, if you go and you shoot up a school, you have a mental health problem somewhere of some kind. It doesn't matter whether you're trans or not. You have a mental, like, nobody who is mentally healthy goes and slaughters a bunch of children at a school, ever. Okay? That's a mental health problem. And Arians, again, who have no power, right? And limited amount of influence. I wouldn't say we have no influence, but it's limited. Okay? But we definitely don't have power. And the world that we seek, we're not even close to. I'm not even talking about my anarchist peers. Okay? They have a much more strict version of the world that they want to see than I do. Mine is much closer to conservatives than my anarchist peers. But we're not even close to that. Okay? But let's talk about this picture. Right? Let's talk about why conservatives lose the definition of a woman, why they have to blame libertarians, because they can't even get their own facts straight. So let's take a look at this article here from the AP that tells us about this photo. Okay? Because remember, the issue is libertarians will tell you they want this person armed. And the implication is like, oh, this person has a mental disorder and they shouldn't be armed because they're a danger to society. So let's talk about the picture that they chose. Here it is. Photo of trans woman holding gun misrepresented after Nashville shooting. It's an old article, okay? So this article was from 2023. Here's the claim that they're addressing. A transgender woman posted a photo of herself holding a gun and calling for violence against Christians, referencing a, quote, trans day of vengeance. Okay, so that was this picture went around. Okay? And conservatives were like, oh, trans day of vengeance. This person, they want to harm you. Okay, well, here's the real story. False. A Twitter account posted a years-old photo of Alana McLaughlin, an MMA fighter and trans woman, holding a gun and falsely suggesting she used the threatening language. McLaughlin confirmed she didn't author the post. The facts. A screenshot of the tweet amassed thousands of shares in the wake of Monday's mass shooting at a private school in Nashville, where police have said the shooter was transgender. The tweet shows McLaughlin with pink hair and pink shirt holding an AR-15 style gun and wearing a Glock 19 pistol with an expanded magazine on her waist with a pink, blue, and white transgender pride flag in the background. The caption appears to advocate for violence against Christians, including the verbs kill, behead, roundhouse, slam dunk, crucify, defecate in, and launch. Okay? Some social media posts claim the tweet was proof McLaughlin was organizing or planning to attend an April protest outside the U.S. Supreme Court called the Trans Day of Vengeance. McLaughlin, who lives in Oregon, confirmed she didn't author the post and was not aware this event was taking place or planning to attend. There is no evidence the Twitter account that originally posted the violent tweet, which was later suspended from the platform, has any ties to the planned event. The event website on Wednesday featured language clarifying that it was, quote, about unity, not inciting violence. Noah Buchanan, co-founder of Trans Radical Activist Network, which is organizing the event, also confirmed to the AP in an email that McLaughlin is not affiliated with the protest and reiterated that it was not intended to be a violent event. The image of McLaughlin used in social media posts dates to 2020 when it was featured in Huck magazine profile about her and other LGBTQ people who said they decided to arm themselves to stay safe amid violence directed toward their community. Okay, so we have the facts. The facts are that that person, let's put the picture right back up there, mostly peaceful memes. Libertarians will look you dead in the eye and tell you the founders wanted this person to own guns. So here it is. I'm going to look you dead in the eye, and I'm going to tell you that, yes, the founders wanted this person, an MMA fighter who has never committed a crime, who appears to be living very peacefully in this country. Yes, the founders wanted them armed. Why did they want them armed? Number one, for an unruly government, to prevent tyranny. That's the number one reason. Ancillary to that is their own self-defense. Yes, they should be armed if they choose to be. I will not back down from that, because the facts are on my side. And conservatives, if you want to save America, try starting with getting your facts correct. Stop blaming libertarians, get your facts correct, and deal with the mental health crisis, which doesn't appear to include that particular trans person. How about that? All right, that's what I got to say so far about the shooting yesterday. Not much about the shooting, just more about blaming us libertarians. Okay? Get your facts right. All right, let's move on. Let's talk about the topic of the day. We're going to talk about Shiloh Hendrix again. Now, Shiloh Hendrix a few months ago made the news because of a video. I'm going to play the video. Parents, if you got your children handy, I apologize. There's going to be some nasty language in this, but I want to play it so that we have context for it. Before I play it, though, I'm going to show you some more images. Let's see. So this image comes from, I think you pronounce his name Aaron. I'm not entirely certain. I tried to look it up before the show, and I couldn't find a video where somebody was saying his name so I could make sure I got it correct. So if I get it incorrect, I apologize. So he said, most of the libertarians losing their mind over free speech and burning the flag will have nothing to say about this, and everyone knows why. And then you can see that he's reposting, this post from BIPOC Doing Racism account, and they say Shiloh Hendrix has been criminally charged with 3 counts of disorderly conduct from this incident. Okay, so they've got a tweet. So later, Aaron makes this comment in response to somebody else. They said, lots of people burned flags yesterday, but how many of them are saying nigga today? And then Aaron says, right, seriously doubt we're going to see a bunch of libertarians posting videos with them shouting the hard R on principle. Okay, that's a weird thing to ask. I mean, anybody that's watched this show knows that I have used both variants of the N-word, the hard R and I guess the soft A, I guess is how you say it, right? I've used both. Am I going to cut it up so that I can put it out there for everybody to see? No, why would I waste my time on that? That's just silly. I use the breadth of the English language at my discretion, okay? That's how I speak. If I think it's useful to say nigga, then I will. If I think it's useful to say the N-word, then I will. It depends on the context, right? And it's the same as I treat that the same as I do anybody else. I've got 2 pastor friends. One lives down the road from me. When I'm talking with him, I don't drop the goddamn. And I actually curtail any profanities as best as I can. Sometimes I get a little animated, right? But I do try to not use certain language that I think will be offensive to people. That's just how I operate. But sometimes it does happen, right? Now, when I'm speaking to a broad audience, I'm a little bit more flexible than when I'm speaking to an individual, right? There are just certain things that I don't say for one reason or another. I never, ever, and I have never, called my wife a bitch. Not to her face, not behind her back, right? I use language at my discretion, and I have specific instances where I think it will be appropriate, and then other instances where I don't think it's appropriate, okay? So are you going to goad me into just saying the N-word repeatedly or go cutting up every instance where I did? No. One, I'm too lazy for that. And number two, that's not how I operate. I'm not being goaded into saying something so that you can pretend that I'm somehow being consistent. This show will be consistent. Okay? And like, I get it. Like, you could make the argument, I suppose, that some people are going all in on something and they're burning the flag, but why aren't they saying the N-word, right? Well, number one, I think they're two different things. One, you're protesting the government. The other one, you're just using a slur that applies to people. Those are two entirely different things. So I don't really know why we would expect one because of the other. That doesn't really make any sense. But then I will give credit to Aron here. He goes on and he says this. He goes, don't get me wrong. A few will be consistent. Many would even give some half-hearted rebuke if you really pressed them on it. I think he meant to say you're not. But you're not going to see precious few hour-long breathless podcasts venting their rage over Hendrix freedom of speech. Well, as it turns out, Aron, today is the day for you. I'm going to do that. I don't know that I'm going to vent my rage, okay? I try not to rage. It happens from time to time. But I don't know that I'm going to vent any rage today. But I am going to talk about Hendrix freedom of speech. So let's talk about it. But first, let's watch the video. Let's remind ourselves of the video that went viral that is causing all of this problem. So here we go.
Did you call him a nigger, the child?
The fuck you talking
Did you
about?
call the child the nigger word?
None of your fucking business.
It is my business. You call him a nigger? Okay, why don't you have the balls to say it right now again?
Fuck you, nigger.
Okay.
Nigger.
All right, that's what you say.
You don't go digging through people's shit, you dumb fuck.
Nobody dig into your shit.
A little fucking kid just did, you dumbass.
That little kid, you call him a nigger?
Yeah.
The little child?
What if he acts like one, he's gonna...
Are you about to hit him? You chase him here?
He took my son's stuff.
So that gives you the right to call the child, 5-year-old, a nigger, the N-word.
If that's what he's gonna act
That's
like.
what you're gonna call him.
That's what he's gonna act like.
You know, that's a hate speech. And you can be recorded for that.
I don't give a shit.
Huh.
Fuck off.
Okay, we'll see about that, what the internet has to say about you.
Okay, so I hate this. I really do. I hate it when people video and they're like, we're going to see what the internet has to say about this. Like, that just seems so childish and juvenile, right? It's like, it's almost like you're telling on him. It's like, Mom, Bobby's on my side of the couch. Mom, that's basically what it comes across to me like. You're just like, you're going to videotape somebody. I didn't like it with the Home Depot lady. Remember that lady? The guy that, it was the Home Depot lady where after the assassination attempt on Trump, she made an offhanded comment on Facebook, I think. She said, too bad the shooter missed. And then people got outraged. And then somebody hunted, the internet did its thing. They found out who she was. They found out where she worked. Some guy showed up, had a video recorder, and he was like, hey, are you so-and-so? And she's like, yes. She's literally checking people out at Home Depot, wearing her Home Depot uniform. And he's like, are you so-and-so? And she's like, yes. And he's like, oh, you think it's okay to say these things about Trump? And she's like, sir, I'm at work. And he's like, yeah, but he was like, you think it's okay? And he's like badgering her. And then he's like, I'm a veteran. I'm going to, get you. I don't remember exactly what he said, but he was basically like, I'm going to tell the internet on you. We're going to make you famous. I think is what he did say. We're going to make you famous, right? And he did. He followed through on that one. And it got big. And then she got fired. I hate that kind of stuff. If you're that kind of person, you're a terrible person. And I don't want to hear this, I don't want to hear anything that you have to say. You are equally as terrible as this woman yelling the N-word at a child. I talked about her a while back, and my big issue was not that she used the N-word so much. It was that she was being mean to a child. Like, yeah, I get it. The child stole something. We're going to talk about that. Yeah, I get it. The child stole something from you. Act like an adult, right? Like, they're 5. I expect 5-year-old kids to do things that are not appropriate. And I expect adults to respond appropriately and to say, hey, that's not right. I don't expect an adult a 20, 30, or she looks like to me about 30, about a 30-year-old adult to run around and insult children, and be like, well, if they're going to act like one, I'm going to call them one. Are you 12? Hello, grow up. That's not how adults should behave. So in that sense, yeah, I have some contempt for her. Okay? Grow up, act like an adult. On the other hand, let's talk about the charges that she's going to now receive. So let's see here. Let's take a look at this interesting document here, because we want to talk about the charges that she may receive. Some people have been saying that she has actually received them. She has not yet been charged. This is a perhaps. So let's see here. There we go. This is from Rochester, Minnesota, city of Rochester. And so they have this news announcement. City announces charging decision related to April incident at City Park. The Rochester City Attorney's Office is filing a complaint summons stemming from the April 28 incident that occurred at Roy Sutherland Playground at Soldiers Field Park. The draft complaint attached is subject to review and approval by a district court judge. The draft complaint charges Shiloh Hendrix with 3 counts of disorderly conduct under Minnesota statute, blah, 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 misdemeanor level charge with a maximum of 90 days in jail and or a $1,000 fine. Okay, what are these 3 charges? Let's talk about them, because it gets kind of interesting. So here we go. I zoomed in as much as I could, folks. So these are the charges that possibly, if a judge approves, that they will move forward with. Okay? Here's me, where I'm going to now shift over from criticizing Shiloh for talking like, an idiot to a child, for not acting like an adult. Okay? Now we're going to talk about the actual charges, and I will actually defend her, because these charges are garbage. All right? So here it is. All right. Shiloh Marie Hendrix, while in a public or private place and knowing or having reasonable grounds to know that it would or would tend to alarm, anger, disturb others, or provoke an assault or breach of the peace, did wrongfully and unlawfully engage in offensive, obscene, abusive, boisterous, or noisy conduct, or in offensive, obscene, or abusive language that would reasonably tend to arouse, alarm, anger, or resentment in others relative to victim YJ. That's a lot of legal language to say she was offensive. She was knowingly offensive to other people. But let's be more specific. All right. So Shiloh, let's see here. So here's that's count 1. Okay, so we are being specific. I'm sorry. So that's count 1. Okay, so they're basically like, hey, you were offensive to victim YJ. Okay, so now count 2. All right, same thing. Shiloh Marie Hendrix, while in a public or private place and knowing or having reasonable grounds to know that it would or would tend to alarm, anger, disturb others, or provoke an assault or breach of the peace, did wrongfully and unlawfully engage in offensive, obscene, abusive, boisterous, or noisy conduct. I like this, conduct. Or in an offensive, obscene, or abusive language that would reasonably tend to arouse alarm, anger, or resentment in others with respect to victim SHJ. Okay? And then count 3 is all of that relative to victim SBO. So, they're charging her with a misdemeanor, 90 days in jail, potentially, $1,000 fine, or both. All right? 3 of them. So each 3. So I believe this one, each one. So it could be up to $3,000 and up to 270 days in jail. Right? That's how I'm reading this, if I understand this correctly. Okay? That's basically it, I think. Is that it? No, I'm sorry. I take it back. There's more. So what is the truth of the matter? What actually even happened? All right. So here's what it says. FO, and they're talking about the peace officer. FO learned that an individual had taken a phone herein after the video. of his encounter with an adult female shortly after the female had engaged in a hostile and racist manner with a child who was at the park. The video had been uploaded to social media platform where it was receiving significant attention. Through further investigation, including a review of the video as well as social media activity related to the video. Wait a minute. What does the social media activity related to the video have to do with her? Like nothing, other than perhaps social media did all the footwork for the police. They figured out who it was. Like, we're paying taxes, but now our internet sleuths, they decide that they're going to waste my tax money by doing the police job. You know, the police should be figuring out who this is. Like, I can appreciate in some cases where internet sleuths, or I can't even say the word, are figuring things out. Right? I get it, and I'm not going to try to stop you from doing it. I'm just saying, by the way, we're paying taxes for people to do that. Just throwing that out there. All right. Attempts to make contact with the defendant were unsuccessful. Further investigation included a statement by a man identified as SHJ. SHJ explained that he was at the above-referenced park shortly after 6 p.m. with his 3 children. One of his children, YJ, is 8 years of age and is profoundly and visibly autistic. Due to his disability, YJ does not understand typical boundaries and requires intensive parental supervision. SHJ explained that at some point while at the park, YJ approached a diaper bag that belonged to someone else, and he took an applesauce pouch from the bag. All of this over applesauce. Just saying. Applesauce. Shiloh, you're not watching, but if you ever were to watch, all of this over applesauce. SHJ saw YJ take the item and attempted to retrieve the item from his son. Defendant also saw YJ take the item from her diaper bag and begin chasing YJ as well. YJ climbed the playground equipment in an attempt to get away from his father and from the defendant. Defendant became very angry while chasing YJ. Defendant shouted at him and repeatedly used a racial epithet, the N-word. YJ is of Somali background, causing YJ to freeze. Based on her anger and her words, SHJ feared that the defendant may strike YJ. Defendant angrily grabbed the food item from YJ. Okay? So I'm sorry with all the initials. That's just how it is. The individual identified as SBO, who saw this encounter and heard the defendant call the child the N-word, approached the defendant. With his phone recording, he asked defendant why she called the child the N-word and pointed out to her that the child is autistic. Defendant admitted to calling the child the N-word, stating that she can call him that if he acts like one. When pressed further, defendant turned her anger toward the man, taking the video, raising her middle finger at him. Whoa. Whoa, folks. The middle. No. She raised the middle finger at another adult? Somebody call the police. We better get SWAT on this. Probably should call, like, I don't know, some 3-letter agency. This is, you know what? Somebody ring up Trump and tell him that the National Guard needs to come to the park. Somebody used the middle finger. I feel like I'm talking about a bunch of children. These are full-grown adults, but I feel like I'm talking about children. Let's see. When asked if she was about to hit the child, she said, "Yeah, he took my son's stuff," and said, "That little effing kid." When confronted about her use of hate speech, defendant twice stated, "I don't give a shit," followed by "fuck off." It was a little hard for me to understand whether or not she said yeah and whether she was. Now, it's interesting that they're like, oh, she was about to hit the child. Okay, so let's use a little analysis, a little reasoning here. According to the story, what we just read, and the video that we watched, the video happened after all of this occurred. And we even see the child standing up on the playground. Okay? So, child comes over, grabs something out of the diaper bag. Mom sees it. Child's dad sees it. They both go running after the child. Child climbs up on the playground. Okay? Mom grabs the applesauce back, I guess. They argue a little bit. She goes on about her way at some point, or she's somewhere else, because the video starts with the conflict with her and the person taking the video, not the dad, not the child. That's where the video starts. So now we see her in conflict with the guy, and he says, "Were you about to hit the child?" Okay, that's not a meaningful question. She is now no longer, she's now confronting the adult, right? From what I can tell, right? From the evidence presented here, there doesn't seem to be any that she was actually going to hit the child. Now, maybe she would have. I don't know. Okay? Maybe she said, "Yeah, I would have." Okay, but she didn't. Right? There's no evidence that she actually hit the child. Did she say something mean to him and yell at him and curse at him? Yes. She admits that. That's in the report here. Okay? Is that foul? Yes. Should she be punished? Arguably. That's arguable. Okay? I'm not a big fan of punishing people for just being offensive. That's not enough. We're going to get to that in a minute because I'm going to remind you of a story. SHJ explained that YJ, as well as his other children, were very scared and troubled by defendant's hateful words and conduct. At the time of this incident, there were multiple other unidentified individuals in the park, including children. In summary, defendant wrongfully and unlawfully engaged in offensive, obscene, abusive, boisterous, or noisy conduct, or in an offensive, obscene, or abusive language that would reasonably tend to arouse alarm, anger, or resentment in others. Yes. Yes. If you say something mean to a child, their parent will be angered and have some resentment towards you. They may be even alarmed. I can't believe you spoke like that to a child. If somebody spoke like that to my child, if they were like, "You're squinty-eyed little flat-faced bastard," right? If they said something like that to my child, yes, I would be alarmed. I'd be like, "Who are you talking to my child like that?" And I would be angry. And I might want to slap them beside the head, right? And I would have a little resentment. Yes, all of that. Do I think they should be charged, up to $3,000, $1,000 per incident, 270 days in jail? That's that's about 2/3 of a year. Do I want her going to jail for 6 to 9 months? No. Do I want them being fined $3,000 because they said mean words? No. Now, could I think of some punishments that might be appropriate? Yes. Community service might be a good one. Why? Because I believe the answer to bigotry and hatefulness is to work with people that you might not like and learn a little bit more about them. Would I be willing to support that? Oh, yeah, absolutely. I don't think she should be entirely off the hook. But what does fining her $3,000 do? Like, you might say, well, that's going to teach her to not use the N-word. No, that'll teach her to not get caught doing the N-word, saying the N-word. That's what that's going to do. At best. That's what it'll do. She's not going to be like, "Man, I really am a bad person because of this $3,000 fine." No, you know what makes people realize they're a bad person? Is when they interact with other people. That's what changes people. And when I've talked about this over and over and over. There's all kind of stories all over the place that we can talk about, right? But let me tell you why I am defending her, why I don't think she should be legally punished in this particular way. From an example that I personally experienced. You might remember episode 321, Afterthoughts, with Maj Touré of an almost fight. That was me at the park. I was at the park one day with my son. There were about 3 women there, and I don't know, a good handful of children. Okay? Kids are playing. I'm sitting on one of the benches. Okay? It's one of the little metal tables that they have. And I'm sitting on top of the table with my feet where you would normally sit, right? And I'm just sitting there, and I'm watching my kid play with the other kids and watching the other kids. And at one point, one of the mothers grabs her kids, and she's like, "It's time to go." And then the other mother said, "Sorry, the kids are just playing. It was an accident." So all I got out of that was, at that moment was, okay, this child got bumped or something like that, from the other kid. And, maybe the kids were just playing a little extra rough, whatever. I didn't really see anything that was out of line. So I didn't really think much of it. So now I'm sitting there, I'm playing with my phone, I'm looking at my phone. I'm also watching my kid. He's running around and he's on the far end of this park. I'm kind of toward more of the center of it. All of a sudden, this man comes over. He is yelling and screaming. And what was all that language? He was being very offensive, obscene, abusive, boisterous, and engaging in noisy conduct. Okay? He was making an absolute scene. And so he comes over, and I figure out really quickly, this is the kid's father. So he starts yelling at this mother of the other children who apparently they're the ones that caused it. So what happened through all this argument? Apparently the kids knocked the one down. The one that got knocked down was probably about 3 years old. I think they had a little bump on their head, small little egg. Okay, that kind of thing happens. My son has gotten hurt at that very same park, not from other kids, but he's fell down and bumped his head. This kind of thing happens. So now the dad's berating this woman. He's up there. He's yelling and screaming. He's cussing at her, and he's like, "You're going to pay for this, blah, blah, blah." And he's just going bananas. So now I'm looking around the park, and I'm like, crap, I'm the only man here. And my instinct might be, let's leave this situation. On the other hand, I'm like, I'm not going to leave a situation that might be threatening to a woman. This is not how I was raised. So I sit there. My son is, again, far away. Man's berating. Eventually, I get tired of hearing this. So I chime in. Now, it's clear to me that the man he's very angry. It's possible that he could engage in violence, but it seems like he's not going to, right? But I engage and I jump in and I yell at him. And then all of a sudden now him and I are yelling at each other. And he's like, "What would you do?" And I told him my almost exact words. I said, if this were my child, I would take him to the hospital instead of standing around yelling at people and scaring all the children in the park. Okay? So I acknowledge that Shiloh might have scared the little child in the same way that I acknowledge that this man was scaring children. And I was like, dude, take your damn child to the hospital if you think it's that important. What I think really what happened, I think he wanted the woman to pay for it. Otherwise, he didn't want to go. That's my guess. I don't really know. So him and I are nose to nose. And he's yelling at me. And since I've inserted myself into a problem that wasn't mine, he's daring me to do anything, right? This is a critical moment. A fight could break out any moment. Now, I did call the police. As soon as him and I kind of had my phone at the ready and I hit the police because I'm like, if this breaks out into violence, the police should probably be here. Okay? But let me tell you, based on everything that happened, if you ask me, should this man be arrested? No, he should not be arrested. He just needs to leave the damn park. And if he feels concerned for his child, he should take him to the hospital. Right? That's it. That's all I wanted. I don't want a man fined. I don't know what the man's financial situation is. I don't know if he's, if this is going to harm, whatever relationship he has with this kid. I mean, look, even though he's angry and he's acting like a buffoon, I will say this in his favor. He seemed to at least care about his child enough to want to get into a fight with somebody. I think he was wrong about it, but in that sense, it's a good thing. I want a dad or a mom to possibly be fighting mad over their child. I just want them to choose when they're fighting mad appropriately. That's it, right? But I'm glad. I'm glad that he cared enough to be ready to throw down with somebody over his kid. Just need to make wiser choices, sir. But I don't think he needs to go to jail. I don't think he needs to have a misdemeanor applied to him. That's just nonsense. Same thing for Shiloh. And from what I read and compared to my experience at the park, what happened with Shiloh was far less dramatic, far more tame. She just used nasty words. So no, I do not. I reject this idea. We all should reject it. Even if you're a black person and you're like, look, I hate the N-word. I got called that when I was growing up, and it just really bothers me. You should hate that. You should hate the idea that the government is going to come in and find somebody, possibly throw them in jail for using nasty words. Because that could be you, a friend of yours, or someone that you love one day. What goes around comes around is explicitly useful when it comes to the government. Like, we should, like, whatever policy you apply towards somebody else could come back around to haunt you for something that you do. This is why I'm a libertarian. This is why I push back on stuff. This is why, not for Aaron, but, in somewhat response to him, this is why I'm doing a whole hour show again on freedom of speech. Was she engaging in freedom of speech? Yes. Was it a good use of freedom of speech? Absolutely not. Right? Is there, and you might say, well, DL, why would you punish her at all? Remember, I said community service. Okay? Like, if the government is to do anything, community service is where I'm going to draw the line. Go work with some people, and maybe you'll get it through your thick head that other people are just like you. They put on their pants one leg at a time, right? They have feelings. They get called names, right? They make mistakes. They have kids that are sometimes unruly. I promise you, Shiloh's going to find out that her kid's going to do something wrong one day too, and she's not going to want somebody to come and berate her child, right? Like her child will do something stupid. Why? Because all children do that. My son, he's a good kid. Like, almost never gets in trouble. And there have been a few times where I'm like, son, be honest. And you could tell he's thinking in his head, do I want to tell a lie? Or should I just come forward with it? And he's trying to calculate, which is worse, I think. I think is what he's calculating. But he's 6. Yes, he's going to do so. I will not be surprised if my son one day steals something. Now, if he repeatedly steals something, then I've got some problems that I got to work out. But I'm not going to be surprised if he does it a few times, because that's what kids do. They do things that they're not supposed to do, right? Now, as to the child being autistic, honestly, I don't care about that. You might go, what? Wait, what? DL? Okay, if a child comes up and they steal something out of my bag and then they run off and their dad chases them and I'm chasing them, I don't think it's going to be immediately apparent to me, like, oh, this child has autism, because I don't think of autism when I think of children stealing stuff. I think of a child doing a normal child thing. So if a child takes something out of my bag, I'm going to immediately assume it's a child doing a normal child thing. I'm not going to be like, oh, I bet they're autistic. They're running off and they're trying to get away from me. I bet that's total sign of autism. No, I don't. And I doubt that most people could really identify an autistic child in the moment. Perhaps, I mean, I wasn't there. We don't have video footage of how that played out. But I'm going to assume that she just thought it was another child. Okay, so I think that she was still wrong, right? Her language was offensive, for sure. You could even call it abusive to the child. I don't think it's abusive to the adult. We're all grown-ups. You can hear naughty words slung at you, all right? Just like I said yesterday, if, in the same way that you should be, we were talking about incitement to riot, in the same way that you have no excuse for rioting or vandalizing property because you saw the flag burned, you have no excuse for rioting and vandalizing and include any kind of violence, right? Because somebody called you a nigger. You don't have any excuse if it's, somebody called your child that word, okay? And I don't think you have any excuse for any of that if some child steals something out of your bag, okay? Like, at some point, we hold people accountable. We say, you're an adult, act like an adult, okay? So if a woman's berating you and she's still wrong, okay, fine. You're an adult, act like one. You don't need the government to come in and charge somebody else because they went to you or whatever, right? Yes, she was being a fool. I feel bad for her child because her child's going to grow up with some probably pretty bad attitudes about other people. Not much I can do about that. But the only thing I can do is raise my voice and say she has the freedom of speech. And if we want to address offensive uses of freedom of speech, we need to be wise in how we do it. Finding somebody money, sending them to jail, I just don't think works. What's my evidence? I don't know. How about all the inmates in jail that get out of jail and still have racist attitudes? Did that seem to resolve them? Sure, you have stories like American History X where the guy goes to jail, comes out and realizes, man, all this was wrong. But I don't think that really actually happens at any level, at any scale. I think what you end up seeing is that people that go in with the negative attitudes about other people, they come out in many cases, way too many cases, with those same attitudes. Okay, especially if it's short-term jail. Now, if they happen to get in jail and they realize, hey, all of this was garbage in the first place, then yeah, maybe they'll get reformed and they'll realize the error of their ways. But I just don't think that this is the best way for our government to govern us. I think if we're going to do anything, send her to go do some community service. Don't cause her to lose her job. If she goes to jail for 270 days, guess what? Now she's going to get fired. If you fine her $3,000, guess what? Now she might have trouble putting food on the table. Great. And what is she going to do? She's going to look at that and she's going to say, all of this because that kid stole from me, right? Would it be useful if she said, man, I should have handled that better? Maybe. But I'm just going to wager a guess that she's not the caliber of person that's going to think like that. So we need to approach things differently. We need to be wise, like, I don't know, the King Solomon guy, cut the baby in half. I'm not suggesting we cut babies in half, but I'm saying we have to start rethinking how we approach what we don't like in society. And I think the far better answer is community service. All right, so let's see what you guys are saying up there in the chat. See if you guys are skewering me or not. We will see. All right, let's see what we got here. Got a few things. I was told LP is kingmaker. We are not. You're not a kingmaker unless you can be a king unmaker. Let's see. Yes, I love this, Joe. Blame libertarians. We literally voted for this. That's basically what it amounts to. The people that voted for what they're getting, they're blaming libertarians. Let's see. That's going back to the earlier part of the show. Let's see. Keith said the founders said that I don't get to tell you you can't have a gun. That is different. That is correct. That is absolutely what that is how it works, right? Because the founders said you have the Second Amendment. They didn't give us the Second Amendment. We talked about that yesterday. All they said was, we're putting this into a formal document. We're acknowledging this formally. And then they said the government can't take that away from you. And if the government can't take it away from you, well, then neither can a person. Let's see what else we got here. Yes, I think this is relevant. Don't have to exercise all of your rights all the time, but should have the rights all the time. Absolutely, right? And in the way that you exercise them, you don't have to exercise them in a particular way all the time. Like, you can say the N-word with just your friends and leave it out of, children that are stealing out of your bag at the park. Like, you can distinctly say, this is a time to use my First Amendment. This is a time it's not appropriate, right? Just because you can doesn't mean you should. Let's see. Yeah, Keith says, again, the N-word refers to character, not race. The racist part comes from the assumption that character depends on race. Yeah, I've heard that. It's a huge debate. I don't think we're at a place where people widely recognize or accept the idea that the N-word, because I've heard people will say like, well, anybody can be a nigger, right? And then they'll say it could be a white person. And there's some black folk that actually, adopt that mentality as well. But I just don't think it's widespread enough. Me personally, I just leave it at, it's offensive, right? It's offensive and it's mean-spirited. And I don't think it really communicates anything worthwhile. So I don't use it. I would rather just say dummy, because at least if I say dummy, well, then that kind of reflects that maybe you're not being so smart right now. You could be, but you're not. I'm not talking about Keith here. I'm just saying, generally speaking. So I get what you're saying. I don't know that it's I don't think that's the argument we want to go with. Let's see what else. Let's see. Yeah. Remind us what Maj's critique was, and aren't you in his affiliate program? Yeah, so I'm in his affiliate program, and you can go to blackgunsmatter.shop, and then you can use the code LibertyDad, all one word, LibertyDad, for a 10% discount. You can also use the referral link, which you will find in the show notes. You can go there, and you can get 10% off. I encourage you to go do that. As far as what Maj said to me, I would encourage people, if you want to know, to go back and look. But he basically critiqued how I interjected myself in, and I did so in a way that did not de-escalate. So if you're going to interject yourself into a situation, you have one of two options: de-escalate or escalate. I mean, when I say options, I mean that's how it's going to play out. You only got, so if you want to de-escalate the situation, then you need to enter it wisely. I did not do so. I entered into it unwisely, and I escalated it a little bit. I got lucky, and I did not escalate it to the point where it became violence. Luckily, a little bit of my old self kicked in, and I was able to not do anything that made the situation even worse, because basically the man was now yelling at me, angry at me for jumping in, daring me to do anything. And like I said on the show, I, kept my hands out to my side. I didn't ball up my fist. I did not touch him. It's very common for a lot of people, somebody gets in your face and you push them away on the street. Pushing somebody is basically aggression. You may not see it that way, but that's how it's perceived. Right or wrong, that's how it's taken quite often. And so a push can actually lead to, oh, you actually do want to fight because you touched me, right? That's how that kind of works. So I did not touch the man. I did not insult the man. Like, that would have been a very bad time for me to drop the N-word, okay? And been like, hey, you're acting like a nigger right now. Like, I would have got punched in the mouth, probably repeatedly, okay? Because the man was already angry. Definitely not the time to exercise your First Amendment speech, right? Be wise when you do it. I think we should use the English language to the maximum, but just be wise when you do it, right? A tense situation, don't do that. Don't call people names. Don't touch people. Keep your hands out to the side so they can see them and they can see that you're not about to swing. Because if I ball up my fist and I start tensing up, then it looks like I may swing, and so then I may give the guy kind of like a reason to swing first. It's kind of the, let me get him before he gets me kind of attitude. Right? So there are ways in which you can de-escalate. I didn't really de-escalate the situation so well. I just escalated it a little further, and then luckily I ended up not escalating it any more after that. All right, folks, that's my show for today. Hope you enjoyed it. Yes, I am defending Shiloh only against the legal repercussions that they're suggesting for her right now. I am not defending her actions. I think her actions were offensive and morally wrong. I think if there is a punishment, that it should be that she should do community service, and then perhaps that would be a way to resolve some of whatever hatred might be inside of her heart. Outside of that, no jail time, no financial punishment. It's not appropriate for words. That's obscene. It's ridiculous. We have free speech. The government should stay out of it in as much as possible. All right, folks, that's my show for today. Thank you so much for joining me, and then I will see you again tomorrow for another episode of Dad Talk.